Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Pokemon Phone Call. Hello, this is Professor Oak. Oh, you don't have to say anything. I know better than anyone else how hard you're working. I thought I should get you a present or something in appreciation. Well, I picked something up, but I completely forgot to give it to you. Oh, you don't have to wonder about it at all. I know it's something that'll be very helpful to you. You should just come here and pick it up. I'll be waiting for you at my laboratory in Pallet Town. Alright, so I guess we're going to go see him. Hi everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Pokemon SoulSilver. Let's see what he's got for us. Thankfully, everything's only a single fly away at this point here in Kanto. Good to see you. This is what I've wanted to give to you. And we get the final HM in the game, HM08. That hidden machine contains the move Rock Climb. When you teach it to a Pokemon, you can go up rock walls that have steps carved in them. Those badges are... Wow. You have not only become the Johto champion, but you've collected all the Kanto badges. Well done. No wonder I sensed something in you when we met. Tell you what, Kyle. I'll make arrangements so that you can go to Mount Silver. Mount Silver is a big mountain that is home to many wild Pokemon. It's too dangerous for your average trainer, so it's off limits. But we can make an exception in your case, Kyle. Go to the Pokemon League reception gate. You can reach Mount Silver from there. Alright, and thus we have access to the final normal area in the game. I say normal because there's technically one area you can't access until you've completed it, or at least do the thing in. And there are some other minor events that we haven't gone to go do yet, but you can now more or less access everything in the game. And that also brings us over to this route. I think this is Route 22 from memory? This route has never had too much in it, except for 2 battles against Blue back in any version of Gen 1. Nowadays, it's got Nidorans, I think a Mankey or 2, Spearow. It's nothing super important. It's just a nice little uplink back towards the Victory Road entrance, as well as our next destination of Mount Silver. West of Mount Silver, east of the Kanto region. Go north for the Elite Four, but you should know that already since you defeated the champion. This way leads to Mount Silver. You'll see scary strong Pokemon out there, but you should be alright. Just watch out for yourself. If there is something I do appreciate about this, and I think it's Gen 7 and 8 who also do pretty well, I like that they actively acknowledge frequently that you are the Johto champion in your own regards now. Because some of the games... When games have post-games that don't acknowledge the fact you've beaten the game before, it always feels a little weird. Unless, like, the post-game takes place before the final boss, or like how Mega Man Battle Network and Star Forces do it, for instance. With that, though, we are now on Route 28. This is a surprisingly important route in the original game because Mount Silver area in general is where you got a lot of the Pokemon you just couldn't get for the Johto Pokedex in Johto or Kanto. For instance, you can find Ponytas, Tangalas, Donphans and Heart Golds. SoulSilver has Ursa-Rings, Rapidashes, Doduos, and Sneasels, so if you wanted to mimic Silver and use one for yourself and get the evolution here in Gen 4, you can finally do that here in the final area without using Safari Zone. And Mount Silver itself is going to have several other new Pokemon to it. And what's a really good way you can tell you're getting close to the end here in any version of the game? You see, this is the last Pokemon Center, and how do they denote that? The only people here are you and the staff. Now, really quick, let's talk about Rock Climb. We're going to use it in a few moments coming up. I'm putting that on Kuro myself. Rock Climb is a HM I didn't used to like, but I've grown used to over time. It's got some good power, it's decently accurate, and in this gen it has like a 1 in 5 chance, I think, of confusing opponents. As a physical move, it's pretty good. But before we go into Mount Silver itself, I'm using a Leaf Stone that I had on Scott, because why not make him a Victory Bell? Plus, I do need him for something. I need to use Cut on some trees to my east to get a TM that is good, even though I forget if I use it or not. I think I do. Maybe I don't. Oh, hi again, Balba. I believe this is the 3rd and final call from him. I guess 4th and final, technically. So now, the Safari Zone's basically maxed out. All you gotta do from there is place blocks to get the right Pokemon you want, level those blocks up, all that. You can now fully access it, I think. But yeah, I don't really get what they were thinking in the original Generation 2 with locking so many Pokemon that are exclusive to Johto's Pokedex. Either in Kanto or Mount Silver. I really feel like they should have front-loaded most of the Johto cast, and then just put some of the common Kantomon into Kanto first, like, barring trainers having it, make Rattatas catchable in Kanto only, or maybe at least late Johto. Alas, you found me. My peace and quiet to heal myself from the exhaustion of standing in the spotlight has been exposed. What, you're not the media? Then you must be one of my fans. Why didn't you say so? You can keep it to yourself that I'm here, right? I'll give you this for that. TN47, if memory checks, is Steel Wing, yes. This is an excellent move for any Pokemon that can learn it. Steel type, as its name would imply, its power isn't super high, but it's decently accurate. The big thing with it is, it has a chance to lower the physical defense of the target by 1 stage, and using that in conjuncture in either double battles or swapping a Pokemon in or out intentionally, just to take advantage of that, could be good. So let's talk about Mount Silver itself. Or Mount Silver Cave, rather. There are 2 routes you can go in Mount Silver Cave to start. You can either take that rock climb wall right there towards the end of the game. But I want to head west first up this waterfall with Graham. Why? Frankly, we're not taking care of Mount Silver itself, the majority of it, for a long while. And to be completely transparent, I made a list, more or less, of events that I wanted to do before we had to tackle the true final boss. And there's some events you also can't do until you've beaten the true final boss. So what we're going to be ending this LP with is the second round against the Elite Four and Lance. And because of that, we're taking care of a lot of events just sort of in the order I felt was appropriate before heading towards even what's up at the top of Mount Silver, before heading over to do the rest of the stuff. We got a long while to go in this LP, despite the fact the end of the game is right in front of us. Pokemon-wise here in Mount Silver Cave, though, by the way, I should probably mention that expert belt we got a moment ago. That's a held item that boosts the damage of super effective moves that the Pokemon uses. I think it's by like 15% or something like that. I'm probably wrong in that. I'm usually kind of off on the percentages for stuff like that. Mount Silver Cave, though, holds some Pokemon for you to catch if you didn't find them at the Safari Zone. For instance, Larvitar you can only get here in the original Generation 2, which is super limiting for that. You can also only catch Misdreavuses here in the original game. I think you can also find Larvitar's first evolution and some other sparsely found Pokemon like Quagsires and stuff. But the more important thing is, if you take the 2 waterfalls, you find yourself at a very sudden legendary Pokemon encounter. Because I guess they just didn't want to put this one in either a reduced Seafoam Island thing for the remake or Victory Road from the original game. It's time for us to go up against our first of Kanto's 3 legendary birds. This is Moltres. Fire flying type, so it is weak against rock, water, and electric. Rock is a 4x weakness, immune to ground. Moltres has very high special attack and a good physical attack as well, and it's got decent HP and speed. It's a legendary Pokemon, so none of its stats are bad. The big problem for the legendary birds for me is that sometimes their learn sets kind of fell apart on themselves, depending on the generation, especially prior physical special split. You can get some good use out of this. It's got pressure for its ability, mainly, so you're only going to be just doubling the PP usage of a lot of enemies, but it's good. I still need to play the DLC for Gen 8 for reasons related to Moltres, though, because I'm very curious on how that thing worked out. I'll always remember Moltres, though, because growing up I watched Pokemon 2000 more times than I'd like to admit, and the sound effect that Moltres makes in that movie, let alone the old, like, Burger King Pokedex toy of it that's super bit crunched, is just buried in my memory forever. I will just hear it sometimes when I'm trying to fall asleep and it will wake me up. Not Moltres' best sprite, though. I don't know why, just the posing of this one makes it feel more like a fire chicken than it usually does. The biggest buffs that Moltres has gotten over time is mostly to its learn set, although its hidden ability isn't too bad when they added those in Gen 5, because I think in later gens it can learn things like Burn Up, which is a very interesting fire-type attack that more or less removes the fire typing if you use it, which can make your Pokemon typeless in some cases. And I think you can eventually learn Sky Attack, which is extraordinarily powerful if arguably not worth using. A lot of Pokemon, if they didn't get buffed by the physical special split or the introduction of a new sub-type down the line, it's usually that their learn sets were made much more interesting. Like I've said, Pokemon seldom get actively worse to use unless it's the addition of, say, Fairy-type down the line that just makes them have more hard counters. Like, Dragon types are still really good, just that Fairy types are common enough now that you might be in trouble. Same with Fairy type moves, and I appreciate that. Every type needed a fear of Arceus in them somewhere. I will say, though, I did kind of laugh while editing this particular video. So this first portion of footage, if memory serves, is Session 16. We end this video in Session 18 footage, so because of how many legendary Pokemon there are to catch in Heart Gold and SoulSilver, a large amount of this latter, 10 recording sessions is probably going to be edited out in some form or manner, and in a way, I'm kind of glad, because 27 recording sessions taking up about 57-ish hours is intimidating. And being able to edit out, at times, 9 to 10 minutes at a time of just trying to catch a Pokemon helps a lot. Do I sometimes wish I would do live commentary for parts like this, just so you could hear me scream in pain as the Moltres escapes from the 87th Ultra Ball? Yes, because, let's be real, that stuff's always funny, and it helps get the views in. But with how I am about flow in LPs, where I want every video to have a substantial amount of progress in some form or another, I need to do it like this. I brought it up a few minutes ago, though. I am kind of surprised that they didn't try to, even reference the Seafoam Islands from memory with any NPCs in Heart Gold SoulSilver. They play this particular remake much more faithfully than Fire Red and Leaf Green and Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. And I kind of get why, because Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, it's 3D then, so they can do some cool stuff here and there, and there's the new Fairy type to worry about. And with Gen 1's remake, there's so much stuff that they couldn't get into the original game. They're probably like, well, we could do this now, or this now, or this now. In a way, Heart Gold SoulSilver is probably the only remake that can outright replace its original game, if only because more of the Pokemon are useful. Because I'd say there's still some value to playing the original Gen 1 here and there, if only to see, man, well, they got a lot better at doing some things. And I don't think Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire can completely replace at least Pokemon Emerald, because of how they handle some story stuff between the two games. And despite not playing it, from the looks, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl will never replace Platinum, even with my misgivings about that particular generation. But we got Moltres at least. The Flame Pokemon. This legendary bird Pokemon is said to bring early spring to the wintry lands it visits. Alright, so can you fly in reverse and bring winter sooner? I like the snow and cold. So this has been Mount Silver for now. We're not returning here for several videos, like I mentioned before, because before we tackle the sort of final thing you're meant to do in the game, I want to tackle many of the optional dungeons I either didn't explore fully or just straight up ignored. I want to go after all the legendaries we haven't gotten yet, like the roamings, and even some other things here and there that we haven't quite talked about yet. So for now, let's head on over to Route 19 south of Fuchsia, because at this point, I think you need to have at least beaten Blaine for this. The rock that these two were working on has been completely destroyed, so we can now access this route down here. Not that this route has anything super important, admittedly. Barring the experience and money, which is the main reason I come here, you only see about 2 new Pokemon in this route if you haven't encountered them otherwise from the battles. I guess if you're looking for Pokemon to catch here, most of them are via fishing. You can get all the Krabby line, the entire Staryu line. You can get Corsola here, decently commonly from memory. And as a swarm, you can find Clam Pearls, which I brought up when we were first heading into Blaine's gym. Not that swarms are a reliable way to find Pokemon, but again, you can catch a surprising amount of Pokemon in this game if you just have the main game and the Pokewalker. Not, again, that I've really seen many versions of this game at used game stores come with a Pokewalker. In fact, I was kind of surprised the other day when I managed to find a physical version of Trails of Cold Steel 1's Decisive Edition at a nearby game store. Speaking of which, I probably should talk about that. Today was the September 13th Nintendo Direct. It was alright. Fire Emblem Engage looks cool. Rune Factory 3 Special, give it to me, please. A Wonderful Life remake looks alright. That game kind of gave me anxiety back in the day, though. Bayonetta 3 looks great. Octopath Traveler 2 is probably the thing I'm most excited for out of all that, besides Breath of the Wild. Tears of the Kingdom, rather, I could have to call it now. Now let's actually talk about Clamperl for once, because this random trainer has one. Clamperl is a pure water type from Generation 3. Its only ability, until it eventually gets a hidden ability, is Shell Armor, which blocks critical hits from happening. Weak to Grass and Electric. Clamperl is a clam, so its biggest stat is okay physical defense. Clamperl's big gimmick is it has two different trait evolutions depending on what you trade it with, either the Deep Sea Tooth we found before near Blaine's Gym, or on the other side of Route 20, rather, we're going to be at in a few moments, a Deep Sea Scale. With one, it evolves into Gorbis, the other, it evolves into Huntail. Gorbis is also pure water type, because I don't think we're ever going to see one, might as well talk about this. Its specialty is high physical stats, like high physical attack and defense. Gorbis' specialty, while also being a water type, is a high special attack and high physical defense. For a water type back in Gen 3, Gorbis was definitely the more useful one. Nowadays, I'd say they both have some metric of value because they both have a stat over 100, which is something I like to look for in Pokemon on my teams. It really just depends if you have a way to trade a Pokemon, let alone twice. But I'll always remember the Clamperl line fondly for one reason. Back when I was completing the bottom screen mechanic in Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, I was looking for Deep Sea Tooths, so I was farming Carvanas on that one route, and I found a shiny. And I've told that story several times before, but damn it, Jump the Sharpedo is iconic. Speaking of iconic, this is Linoon. This evolves from Zigzagoon at level 20, pure normal type in this region, so it's weak to fighting, immune to ghosts. For being Zigzagoon's evolution, it has some really decently high speed. The rest of its stats aren't anything super standout, which means you're mostly going to be using a Linoon probably as a speed tank with HM moves. But at least it has a metric of value over Zigzagoon besides pickup. And I think it will still have pickup if you evolve it. Either that or, like, Gluttony, I think. That sounds like the other ability Zigzagoon has. The main reason we're coming this way, besides just exploring that route and showing off those two Pokemon, is I think this is the better entrance to explore the Seafoam Islands from. We came here for when we fought Blaine, but now it's time for us to actively explore this place and get to its depths. With that said, it's not a super imperative area. Yeah, there's some new Pokemon you can catch here, or at least rarer Pokemon. Let me get a list up here. Besides the Zubat and Psyduck lines, as you get deeper, you can find Seals, Dugongs. The most important, at least rarest Pokemon, rather, is on the very bottom floor. You have like a 10-ish% chance, I want to say, of finding a Jinx. So if you wanted one of those, you can finally get one of them. You can also find Slowbros in here naturally, so if you don't want to evolve a Slowpoke, there you go. The major mechanic with this place is it's like the Ice Cave near Blackthorn. It even has the same musical track from memory. So you're going to have to do a mixture of strength puzzles and ice sliding puzzles. The reason I particularly entered from the left passage instead of going near Blaine again is it would allow me to do this floor in particular in one trip without having to backtrack up or down a floor an extra time to reset these particular rocks. Little extra? Maybe. The Seafoam Islands as a child weirdly intimidated me, and I can't exactly place why. Maybe it's the underground ice cave in general is just kind of a threatening thing to me, because I can't swim and don't like water, period. So it being cold in that just sounds like a death sentence. Or maybe it's because I just sucked at navigating dungeons as a kid. That could also very much be the metric I'm looking at here. At least there's some active trainers here, because I don't remember there being too many here in Fire Red Leaf Green. In fact, let me confirm that real quick, because I don't remember at this point. Oh yeah, no. No trainers in Gen 1 or 3. Thank you, Bulbapedia, for just allowing me to quickly look at that. Speed up theme for this part, even though we're only going to hear it here in Seafoam Islands, is the Casino Park theme from Sonic Heroes. A great song on its own, but as someone who played a certain other PS2 game more, or in my case, because I had the PS2 versions of Heroes and Shadow, which is probably like why I don't like either of those games too much. Casino Park's theme will always remind me more of Ape Escape 3, because there's some really similar instrumentation used between the soundtracks there. While I'm in here, though, I'm trying to think of what I think the hardest Pokemon dungeon is, and I'm talking in terms of navigation, not like they throw level 70 Pokemon at you or something like that, or there's too many trainers. I'm talking like pure hardest dungeon. Some of the victory roads come to mind just for the amount of HMs they require of you. Others come to mind because of how weird they are to navigate, like Mount Coronet's probably my least favorite overall, but that's because it's one of my main detracting points from the original Generation 4. Some other caves in Gen 4 come to mind even, like I didn't understand the cave where you find Giratina in Diamond and Pearl at all when I was younger. I guess I don't like, what's it called, Snow Peak Ruins or something from, no, that's Majora's Mask. The temple, Snow Point Temple I think is what it is actually, on the very north of Sinnoh. I didn't like I can't remember the name of the tower itself, but it's the sort of graveyardy tower in Gen 5 that you go into later down the road, because I think there's like 2 graveyard towers in Unova from memory. I didn't like that just because for some reason I found the quote-unquote platforming in there weird compared to some other Pokemon dungeons. And that's not even going into like spin-off dungeons. Like, yeah, some of the mystery dungeons suck, but that's because they're randomly generated and some of them have really mean either sub-requirements for getting through, like not entering with items, or just really mean Pokemon for you to run into, depending on your starter. The Ranger games have some annoying dungeons because they actively have to do some amount of puzzle solving in those. Like I remember as a kid, I had trouble getting past I actively can't remember the name of the team from the original Pokemon Ranger, but their base where you had to go over those security panels. I had trouble with that. Mostly because at the time, I was trying to control the game on the touchscreen, and frankly, that just doesn't work as well as the D-pad for Ranger 1, at least in my eyes. Doing a lot of jump cuts here, by the way, because I'm forgetting the answers to a lot of these puzzles. I have to stand there for a moment and go, my brain's falling apart. I'm only 25. This one in particular is particularly rough on that. It's weird. I'm better with ice slide puzzles in some games than others, and it really depends on the camera angle you can get. Like in Zelda games, I can solve these usually no problem, like the one in the Twilight Princess Manor dungeon. I think that might be Snow Peak Temple, actually. I'm getting a lot of different names mixed up in my head when it comes to Snow Ruin area dungeons. And I also think of certain areas in, I think it was it Wind Waker that had those block puzzles, or was it one of the other Toon Link games? I want to say it was one of the Toon Link games. It's been a bit. I haven't revisited a lot of those in a while. Minish Cap's the one I replayed the most recently. It's been a couple of years since Wind Waker at this point. Same with, it's probably been close to a decade since either of the DS games. Bit of a shame because I do really love Spirit Tracks, but man, those games have some cool ideas in them. But then they have big detracting points like that control scheme just being very uncomfortable or very easy to scratch your DS screen in some cases. I do appreciate that the further you get into a handheld or console's lifespan, usually they rely less and less on like the main gimmick of it. Like, yes, touchscreen was always used on the DS and 3DS, but later games in either handheld's lifespan usually were smarter about it. Like, they'll be like, we'll use it for menu navigation only, instead of doing like what I think was it Dawn of Sorrow was the Soma DS Castlevania, where you had to drag the symbol of the mark you're trying to seal the boss with. That just didn't feel good. And I'm kind of glad that in some regards that a lot of the Switch games have kind of calmed down on Joy-Con stuff as they've gone through a little bit. A lot of them also support Pro Controller, which I'm happy about because that just feels better in my hands. Alright, time for the main reason you come here to Seafoam Islands. Like how Moltres was in Mount Silver, Seafoam Islands is once again home to Articuno. And you may have noticed there's an item below them on the map, so make sure you remember to get that before you leave. Articuno is the worst of the original legendary bird trio. Ice flying type, meaning it is weak against rock, steel, fire, and electric. Rock is a 4 times weakness. It's got good defense stats overall. In fact, I think it's overall the most defensively minded of the 3 legendary birds. But because of how comparatively suffering its attack and special attack are, it just isn't as comfortable to use in battle. Its learn set is also kind of rough from memory, at least as of this generation. As while it can learn a lot of the good ice moves like Sheer Cold or Blizzard, its learn set outside of the ice type is a little sketchy. As well, it can learn things like Roost to heal its HP back up high, and some good status moves like Agility or Reflect. Its attack set is just kinda low. Like, I'm looking, actually, let me look at the Bulbapedia Generation 4 learn set. By leveling up, Ancient Power could be okay, I guess. Hyper Beam via TM, okay. Return, most Pokemon can learn that. Aerial Ace could be nice. Yeah, there's not a lot of really good attack moves here that you probably already wouldn't have on something else like Fly. Articuno just never really got a chance to prove itself, despite it honestly being my favorite design of the 3. I don't know why, I've always liked this particular design. The crest on its head looks cool, I like the giant flowing tail. It's a bird, and it's blue, so Kid Me loved it. Always did find it weird, I think I brought this back up when we were catching Lugia. Always did kind of find it weird that Lugia was the master of the 3 Kanto birds, at least in the movie, more so than anything. It's like the only time they introduce the trio lead of a Pokemon Legendary set. A generation after, usually it's the same generation. A little bit weird, but oh well. It's not like they haven't expanded Pokemon roles outside of the next generation, even, because thinking about it, they did a lot more with Zygarde in Gen 7 than they ever did in Gen 6. It helps that also Zygarde's other forms that aren't the base one in Gen 6 are, from memory, a lot more useful. 15 minutes later. At least it's not the 40 we've seen before, but legendary Pokemon catching is not a fun process. But we got Articuno, 2 down, 1 to go for Kanto's legendary birds. Articuno, the freeze Pokemon. One of the legendary bird Pokemon. It chills moisture in the atmosphere to create snow while flying. Now that's my shit. I love the cold, I love the snow. Autumn and winter are the best seasons overall. Barring potential vacations in summer, but that's a different thing. I don't like the heat. Whenever I show you the Ultra Ball count after a Pokemon like that, usually, it is also because either I cut it really close, or I'm showing you how many I had left after that particular attempt, because in some cases I am doing soft resets because I run out of Ultra Balls or Pokeballs, period, barring the Master Ball. Because I have a very particular use in mind for the Master Ball. And now your first instinct after catching Articuno might be to use Dig or an Escape Rope to get out of here. If you're looking for every item, you're not done yet. There's still 2 items you have to grab by heading west of Articuno and up the next ladder. You could even, we even technically saw one of them on the dowsing machine earlier. Right here. And a rare candy is a good thing to grab. I at least like that Pokemon's always had optional side dungeons like this, even if their designs at times are very lackluster, if not annoying, I guess is the word I want to use in the case of the place where Giratina was in Diamond and Pearl. The big thing is some of them just either take too much effort to get everything out of, or they require backtracking in some form or another, and in Pokemon that just doesn't feel as good to me. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 32, now that we got 2 of the 3 legendary birds in Kanto, let me actually check my Word document to see what's next. We're going to go take care of 2 other birds we still haven't caught. See you guys then.